Hi Team Plants. This week in class we're going to be covering some plants with levels of classification that we did not discuss at the beginning of the semester. And so it's time to talk about more plant taxa. So just to go back over the basics, we remember our different levels of classification: kingdom, division, class, order, family, genus, species. And in this class, the levels of classification we're most concerned with are the last three: family, genus, and species. So now we're going to learn about some other levels of classification. Starting with intergeneric hybrid. This is at the same level of classification as genus. Intergeneric hybrid is a kind of plant that happens when two plants of different genera reproduce, find some way to pollinate or receive pollen from another plant of a different genus, and then develop a seed from that. So intergeneric hybrid, cross between two plants of the same genus. These are kind of similar to mules in the animal kingdom. If you're familiar with the animal that is the product of a horse and a donkey mating, typically we don't deal with intergeneric hybrids too much because they tend to be sterile. They tend to not be able to reproduce other things. Like mules can't mate with one another and make mule babies. So intergeneric hybrids typically are not fertile. So an example of one is X. I just already blew it up. Is X. cupressociporus leylandii, sometimes just called cupressociporus leylandii. The common name of this plant is Leyland cypress. So Leyland cypress is the cross between plants of two different genera: Cupressus macrocarpa, Monterey cypress, and Chamaecyparis nootkatensis, Nootka cypress. So you'll see there those two genus, the two genera of these plants are different: Cupressus and Chamaecyparis. Pay attention, when we write the names of hybrids, the X in the name is never italicized or underlined. So there's another kind of hybrid that we also need to think about, and that is the intrageneric hybrid. So intrageneric hybrids are at the same level as species, and they are when two plants within the same genus but different species reproduce, share pollen, receive pollen, and grow a plant from it. And these plants, they're a little bit more related. Obviously, they're in the same genus. Pay attention here because intergeneric and intrageneric are very similar words. The prefix inter means between, like between two genera, and the prefix intra means within a genus. So an example of an intrageneric hybrid is Viburnum X Rhytidophyloides, or Lantana phylum Viburnum. And this is one of the plants that we will cover. Viburnum X Rhytidophyloides is a cross between two plants in the genus Viburnum: Viburnum rhytidophyllum, which is leatherleaf viburnum, and Viburnum lantana, which is wayfaring tree viburnum. So again, like with the intergeneric hybrid, the X in between the genus and the specific epithet here is not italicized or underlined. So quick recap. Plants of two different genera make intergeneric hybrids, and plants within a genus but of two different species make intrageneric hybrids. So these taxa are at or above the level of species, and these taxa that we're going to talk about now are below the level of species. You could also think of it as they are within the level of species. So the first two, the primary ones below the level of species with which we're concerned and that we'll cover now, are variety and cultivar. So first, variety. Variety is a level of classification of plants that are members of a species but are different from the typical species description by more than one characteristic. These occur naturally, they occur in nature, and they are discovered by people and identified as a variety. So an example of this is Taxodium disticum variety Imbricarium, commonly known as pond cypress. Pond cypresses grow in the same region as bald cypresses, but they are specific to places that have non-moving water. So as opposed to growing by the sides of creeks or rivers, they grow around ponds, places where, car honking, places where the water is not moving. Varieties are indicated in the nomenclature with the abbreviation VAR period in between the specific epithet and the Latin variety name, here between disticum and imbricarium, and the VAR is never capitalized and it's never italicized or underlined. So the other taxon that we're concerned with below the level of species, the other primary taxon, I should say, is a cultivar. And cultivars are members of a species that are developed or created through intentional human-directed cultivation, which is to say breeding programs, and they differ from the typical species also in more than one way. So cultivar is not, it's a word that's a combination of two words, cultivated and variety. So cultivars are cultivated varieties, and again, these are the product of plant breeding, of plant breeders. They do not occur naturally in nature. So an example of a cultivar that we've already seen is Cornus sericea flaviremia. This is yellow twig dogwood. Cultivars are indicated in nomenclature with a name that comes after the specific epithet that is contained within single quotation marks. The cultivar name is always capitalized, but never italicized or underlined. There's another taxon that I need to discuss, which is subspecies. And this occurs between the levels of species and variety. So it is like an in-between. It's like a mezzanine level. Subspecies are geographically isolated versions of a species that differ from the parent species in multiple ways, but are similar in others. So it's kind of like going halvesies. But the key here is that subspecies have to be geographically isolated. It's not just that they can occur next to ponds, but that in a specific geographic region. The classification of subspecies is debated by scientists. Many botanists will classify subspecies as a different species rather than a subspecies. Other people classify it as a variety. So, klaxon warning here. A lot of plants that you may see identified as just a species may elsewhere be identified as a subspecies, and vice versa. So an example of that is one of the plants in the class. Here I'm calling it Sambucus nigra, subspecies canadensis. You will also see it classified as just Sambucus canadensis. So this one, Nigra subspecies canadensis, is a subspecies, but Sambucus canadensis is just a species. So here, evidence of this debate about how this plant should be classified. Commonly, though, this plant is just called elderberry. So we indicate subspecies in the nomenclature with a Latin name that is preceded by the abbreviation SSP period. And I want to call your attention to this because there's a little point of possible confusion here. So the abbreviation SSP indicates subspecies. You will also see me in class use the abbreviation SPP, which is the abbreviation for species plural. So just heads up, pay attention, 2 S's, subspecies, 2 P's, 2 species. So the Latin name of subspecies is always italicized or underlined. It's always lowercase. And the abbreviation SSP is never italicized or underlined. I'm going to move a little bit out of this sun. I think there's some sun creeping into my eyes. Okay, so now there's also another level of classification below the levels of variety and cultivar, or the level of variety and cultivar, I should say. It's one level, and that's forma. Formas are sporadically occurring, sporadic and naturally occurring, I should say, members of a subspecies, variety, or cultivar, and they differ from the parent in one way. So these are naturally occurring, like I said, and after they are discovered in the wild, they can be propagated vegetatively so that they are available commercially in the nursery industry, which is to say they can be propagated asexually through cuttings, clones of the parent plant to create new plants available in the nursery industry. I'm going to adjust again just to get that sun out of my eyes. So an example of forma is Gladicia triacanthos, Forma inermis. This is thornless honey locust. We'll cover this in just a few weeks. Formas are indicated in nomenclature with a Latin name after the specific epithet that is preceded by the abbreviation F period. And that F stands for forma. The forma Latin name is always italicized or underlined, all lowercase. But the abbreviation is never italicized or underlined. And it looks like I made a mistake in this slide. I left that F italicized. I'm going to correct that in the version that you have for your own reference. My apologies. So take-home message. Things to pay attention to. Pay attention to which taxa contain or are contained by other taxa. Pay attention to how each taxon arises or occurs or is produced, and pay attention to the proper way to write the names of plants within each taxon. That's it. Let me know if you have any questions about these new plant taxa.